Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Natasha coming to us all the way from Texas, where she's, weather's a little bit better than it is here. I know they just got a cold front coming through, but hey, that's the world's smallest violin that I got from the people complaining about, their winter weather woes. But, yeah, she's on here to share her, fitness journey and talk all things of fitness, and she's fit at 47. I would normally not mention that, but it's part of her Instagram name, and, again, that's just the benefits of working out, where don't look a day over 30, basically, where you're just like, okay, more people need to go to the gym now. But Natasha, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm not even going to get into the weather woes because, that's just a touchy subject for me at this point in the year. So to get things started, why don't you just give us your backstory on what inspired and motivated you to get into the gym and start working out and where you're at right now?
Absolutely. So I'm originally from Toronto, and I am now a citizen here of Houston or in the United States, 17 years. And I've always actually worked out, just not to the degree in which I do now. I remember the days back home where I'd be doing walking lunges in my apartment, so my babies would be like, "What is mom doing?" Anyhow, to kind of fast forward, and I moved here, got married, ended up getting a divorce, and I needed an outlet, is really what it was. Here in this country, no family. It was just like, okay, you've got to find something, Natasha, to stabilize and balance and bring your life back on track. So I have a background in modeling. I did that professionally for years back in Toronto, and I wanted to get back into it out here and found challenges in doing so. So it was actually a personal trainer that I know of that said to me, "Why don't you get into competitive bodybuilding? You can be that glitz and glamour on stage, but you've got some muscles that you can show." So from there, back in 2013, I started prepping for my first show. Didn't do the greatest, third call out, 16th place, and it was bikini. But I said, you know what? I want more. And from there, I just kind of kept going. I just didn't want to stop. At this point now, it was more so not about getting back into something that was a hobby that I enjoyed. It was more the sensation of relief, physical and mental relief from everything that I had been through and had been going through. It just sort of brought that calmness for me. And I just haven't stopped. I am a mother of four. My oldest is 30 to 28 to 26 down to 13. And they're looking at me. My son is a personal trainer. He does quite well back in Toronto. My other girls are like, "Mom, let's get on this. Let's get virtual. Let's do some workouts. Let's do this." So it's now a point where I'm just so driven that much more because of how I feel at 47. I feel the best that I ever have, after having my children. And mentally, my level of clarity and focus is so much more in tune. And they're watching what I'm doing and they're watching how far I'm going. And if that continues to inspire them first and foremost, I'm touching not only them, but I'm touching other people. And in turn, it's a blessing for me to be able to do what I'm doing and be able to share it with others. So that's kind of the backlag, really, just to kind of get my head back on track from life in general. And right now, I feel like I'm there. There's just so much more that needs to happen, but I'm at a happy place. So that's kind of what that looked like for me.
Mom of four, geez, I mean, how you're able to even find time to go to the gym, that's the thing that amazes me the most about, especially the moms that I have on this podcast. But, I mean, with bodybuilding, so many people in the general public are ill-informed about the sport. What was probably the most surprising thing about the sport when you first started getting into it?
The diet, really the diet, the eating, the way of eating. It's a lifestyle, literally. Back then, of course, you don't know where you're going when you start. You're just kind of going, right? Now I know where I'm going because I have a better understanding of what that looks like. And back then, when I first started, I really didn't have proper coaching. Really, a lot of my information was from the internet, Googling this, that, and the other, and not really having a good understanding of how important that diet is. And and I spoke to this actually the other day, a lot of folks seem to think that we starve ourselves to get down to this low body fat percentage, when in fact, no, we have to eat to maintain our size. We have to eat to grow our muscle, but there's a technique to it so that you're literally burning fat and still building muscle at the same time. And it took me a long time to understand what that looked like. Whereas before, I was literally starving myself. And I was like, oh my gosh, my face is going. Like, what is this? Whereas now I feel good. I don't feel tired. I don't feel fatigued. My carbs are still in because of my body type. It runs off carbs. So I get to eat certain foods still and still maintain what it is that I need to in order to walk on stage and do my best. So the diet was the hardest part.
And speaking on that diet, I mean, what were some of the biggest nutritional changes that you've made over your journey?
Adding more healthy fats, right? Which I really didn't understand before. Understanding the carbohydrates that you can consume, what's good versus what's bad, really learning your macros, how much, like I weigh everything. We have to weigh everything and it has to stay consistent, right? So, really getting an understanding of what that looks like. Brian, if you saw me in my kitchen weighing my food, if it's supposed to be 4.4, I'm literally shredding it and taking pieces out to get to 4.4. So that would pretty much be that.
I mean, just the food prep in general is an aspect of this lifestyle that most people are not aware of, and just how important it is, and how most of these guests that I have on, yeah, that's their whole entire weekend is, just hours upon hours of just doing the measuring. And has it gotten to a point now where you sort of have a sixth sense about like how stuff weighs because you've just been so used to it?
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's incredible. And it's like, okay, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta do it like this, I gotta do it like that. You're just so dialed in because you know what the end result will be, right? But yeah, it's to a point now where I just know I can look at, okay, that's approximately this and that's approximately that, but let me make sure.
Well, I've been working in warehouses for like the last 6 years, so now it's gotten to a point where if I pick up a box, like I almost know down to, I mean, I'm probably about 90% accurate about how much that thing weighs. So it's, yeah, it's just the stuff. But I mean, I love to talk genetics on this podcast because I hear this all the time. Oh my God, I want his arms, I want her abs, I want their back. And it's, oh my God, I just want to strangle them because like you do not understand that you can train just like someone and you can eat just like them and you will not get that look. But whenever someone first gets started working out, I mean, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much. And they have that one body part that just drags behind it. They have to train to oblivion. What were those body parts for you?
Legs, my quads. So I've complained about that from, okay, so from my first show, obviously I'm learning. So I'm seeing how I look coming in so lean. I believe I walked on stage at like 12% body fat. And from my second show, I did the Ronnie Coleman. That show, I think I walked on, I believe it was 7% body fat. So when I look at the variances and the difference and I start taking a look at my legs, it's like, okay, what do I need to do differently? Because I'm long, I'm 5'10. I have long, lean muscles. So it takes a little bit more for them to get developed. And I found myself watching a lot of female bodybuilders not taking into consideration one, they're younger than me, and two, they're shorter than me. Our body types are very different. So what would show up faster for them with shorter ligaments might be, it's going to take a little bit more for me because I have longer ligaments, right? So I really had to learn to understand technique and how often should I be training my quads, so that, because I also have a very fast acting metabolism, I burn fat really easily. It's harder for me to gain weight than it is for me to lose it. I can lose it super easy. So I had to take all of these factors into consideration with my training so that it would not impact my quads, because though it's a large muscle group, right? So for years, I would complain about this. Ryan, to this day, you still won't see me in the gym wearing shorts. And I have beautiful legs, right? But in my mind, they're still not big enough, So, and I think that might be something we all, as bodybuilders in general, whatever the situation may be, we all have something that we pick on. And for me, it's my quads. So I have this lovely contraption that I'm sitting on, and it allows me to do leg extensions. So I'll be in here watching when I get an opportunity a Netflix movie and I'm doing leg extensions because I'm aware of what it is that I need to work on as far as developing, and I'm constantly in repetition in doing so. So it would have been my quads for sure. And my
Oh, what was one that just absolutely exploded?
the one that exploded for me,
Yeah.
I have to say my
Yep.
shoulders. My shoulders came out pretty fast. I mean, as I eat, they start filling up and filling up and filling up. Of course, that's just the nature of how that works. And then when I get that pump, it's just like these big boulders come out. Whereas in the morning, they just look like pretty princess shoulders, right? So I have to say my shoulders were the first that popped.
Well, and that's the number one thing that a lot of women on here complain about is shoulders is like the hardest thing for them to train. So what do you do for shoulders? Because I would get absolutely killed in the comments down below if I didn't ask you that because they'd be like, "Oh, Ryan, why didn't you ask her what she does for her shoulders? Because I've been training them since 1998 and they haven't taken off." So what do you do for them?
I do a lot of shoulder presses. So I do a lot of these, but I go really heavy with them. Um, I'm with a new team now, Armor Fitness, and they have me mixing up. They mix it up so that the body doesn't plateau, because that's one thing that you need to take into consideration. If you're doing the same repetition, focusing on the same movement, you will plateau. The body's like, okay, I've had enough of this. I'm used to this. Give me something different. So I did a lot of shoulder presses for the longest while with my previous coach, and we've since changed it up. And in doing so, I've seen more size. So a lot of fronts, sides, shoulder presses, a lot of these as well. These give me the most burnout. But the key thing is if you want to grow your shoulder, if you want to grow any body part, any muscle group, you have to be consistent with how you're eating in order to do so.
Again, that diet, I mean, it's so undervalued to so many people that are just getting started and things. And I love that you mentioned that you're 5'10 because I'm 6'3 myself. So my legs are also the one thing for me that just, I could inject pure muscle into my legs and they wouldn't even take off. I mean, it's just, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I've had so many short competitors on. So I love when we get another tall competitor on just to talk about, it is a struggle, especially when you have those longer, those longer limbs. It's unfair, but that's why whenever I see someone that looks really great, who's really tall, it makes me appreciate, that hard work even more just because they have to, deal with a lot more than some of the shorter guests where I've had, like 4'11" people on where they're just like, yeah, I can just walk and basically my legs take off. And it's like, yeah.
I'm like, gosh, I'm just like, I don't want to say I'm jealous because I don't want to be jealous, but I have such admiration because it's like you just don't have you're going heavy, but you don't have to go as crazy as I do. You're so lucky for that. So yeah.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you mentioned it before, but like this is so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport. And so many people do not understand that because they'll just see the physical changes and say, oh, Natasha, you look amazing. But they don't realize that mental transformation that's taken place as well. And that's, 100 times more important than anything that you'll see in the gym result wise. But what has this journey been like for you mentally?
Okay, let me say this first. I absolutely love this process because I mean, without saying too much, I put the most high first and allow him to lead my path with this. If this is meant for me, you will allow this to be. And in doing so, it's nothing but the most positive experience, right? I love it. I love it. There are ups and downs, most definitely. Getting up and doing fasted cardio is a I dread. I dread doing it because I know what cardio does for me, being I can shed weight very, very quickly, right? So my fear is losing muscle. My fear is my face caving in, all these things. But because of the love that I have in support to what it has done for me mentally, not only physically, is what keeps driving me consistently to doing it, knowing, okay, as much as I dread doing this, I know what the end result will be, not just physically, but mentally as well. And whatever we do that changes the mental mindset hits the emotional part of that too, right? So I hope that answers your question there. I can get a little run
Oh,
on, but
100%. Yeah, I mean, totally. This is just the mental aspect. I mean, just dealing with just waking up every day, and like you said, that fasted cardio, which I'll talk about in a little bit because I hate cardio more than life itself. Yeah, I mean, just the mental strength that you need to have to compete in this sport or even just live this lifestyle, it's immense. And to me, that's the most impressive thing out of it all. But what was your friends and family's reaction like when you announced to them, like, hey, I want to give bodybuilding a try?
My kids are my biggest support, along with those that are in the industry, of course, that I've made and built relationships with that understand because we do the same things. As far as other family, you know, it's really hard to say. My mom, I think she's still trying to get a grasp around why I'm doing this, but she's also very Christian. She's a minister, all this stuff. But the funny thing about it is that my grandfather was a bodybuilder back in Guyana years ago, which I recently learned. And then I have my dad. Also, he wasn't a bodybuilder, but he was always lifting weights, apparently, from what I was told. And then I have a cousin that I just found out that was a power lifter. So within my family, there's some understanding to some degree of what it looks like. However, they don't know the full dynamics behind what it takes to do this. Whereas I believe if they did, they would then be like, okay, if she can do that, if we can do what we do with our body, can you imagine what else we can do if we were to put our mind wholeheartedly on that? And I have to remind myself of this every day too, right? But yeah, so the most support is primarily from my children and those in the community that understand what I do. And then I get a lot of folks that you look great, you look wonderful. They don't really understand the process though, because then you get that, oh, you're looking like this and you're looking like that. Well, educate yourself to understand what you're admiring so you'll see the work that's put in to get to that point, right? So,
Do your kids sort of know to sort of leave you alone the last few weeks of prep where it's like just let mom do her thing, she's got enough on her plate right now? I mean, because we've heard that a lot where it's like sometimes the kids got to learn the hard way about prep brain and all that other stuff.
yeah. So, I talk to my one daughter, Keisha, every single day. There's not a day that can go by where we don't have a conversation. And I highly doubt she'll leave me alone. She's starting to dabble a lot in the nutritional side of things. So for her, it's fascinating on that end. So I highly doubt she'll leave me be. My other daughter doesn't seem to worry too much. She just gets excited when she sees, oh, you're getting just jacked, kind of thing. But for the most part, they know what's up. My son, they all know what's up. So I'll just be like, okay, guys, I got to dial in. I got to focus, which is what I'm doing now. What's what I'm doing now will essentially be somewhat the same as then. It'll just be a little bit more intense, right? But yeah, that's my daughter, my one daughter.
And I mean, the one thing that just about you that I just wanted to ask about because it just seems like it would be such a hard thing to overcome mentally is like you said, it takes you a lot to put on size and put on muscle. Just the way that you are, and I'm sort of like that myself too. Where it's like, yeah, I literally would have to eat, like 20 cupcakes to even put on a pound, really a fat. At this point in my life, I'm 27, so who knows, maybe 10 years from now I'll be different. But how do you deal with that mentally, knowing that like you said, yeah, waking up and doing the cardio where you're just like, I don't want to lose any of this. I'm afraid. How do you deal with that whole thing mentally? Just realizing the fact that like, hey, it's a lot harder for you than for maybe some of the other guests that I've had on to really put on that size.
Right. Okay. So let me share this with you. When I started with this team and they gave me my plan, within the first, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks of the plan, I was like, okay, I'm still hungry. I eat. I like to eat, right? But prior to this prep, I've always been. You wouldn't see me without something in my mouth, or I'd always have snacks with me, or what have you. So eating has never been an issue. However, knowing that the objective is to add mass and I need to grow and understanding my body myself, I'm a personal trainer as well. So I do have some knowledge to what that looks like. It was like, okay, this is what's going on, guys. What can we do? So they actually increased my meals. So I'm now eating 6 full meals throughout the entire day. Yeah, it's quite a lot. However, it substantiates for my height and then my level of training. I need that because of the fact that I have a fast metabolism. But it's a mental thing to lock your mind in to be able to get all this food in, knowing what it's going to do for the body, right? So it had been a bit challenging at first, most definitely. It had been a change from the first plan to the second plan because it's so much more food. But I'm telling you, Ryan, now I'm literally breathing it. I'm literally like it's nothing. It's like okay, I want some more. I'm hungry again within an hour, but I have to pace myself because if I eat that meal in an hour, it's gonna be 9 o'clock at night and I'm not ready to go to bed yet. I'm still working and I'm gonna be starving. So I think I have a bit of the opposite. I could actually eat more, right? But not now because of what's about to happen in the next 8 weeks. So
Yeah. And I mean, the number one surprise about the sport that I would have never guessed in a million years before I started this podcast, because I was aware of some things, but it's that posing for a lot of these guests is the hardest thing for them. It's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than your working out. What has your experience with posing been like?
oh my gosh. So I have a background in modeling. I modeled professionally for 7 years back in Toronto, and I was listed as a B plus model. I did all the shows, I was in the collections. Walking the runway is nothing in comparison to getting on stage in front of an entire audience, showing off the hard work you've put in all that time. So, and I didn't really understand that till I got to like my third show. It was like, okay, I got to get this posing down. I got to lock this down. So I started practicing, but not as much as I should have. I did not then really seek out professionals to support that process because, in my mind, I modeled for years. I can do this. Let me watch a YouTube channel. Let me see, what the ladies are doing, and I can just mimic and follow. Well, no, because everybody's body type is different. Some have to stand a certain way to get the quads to pop. Some have to stand a certain way to get the shoulders to pop or the lats to come out differently. You have to understand the breathing, breathe up through the diaphragm because you have to hold that pose and you don't want to be on there going like this. And you already got stage fright because you have all these people watching you, right? So, with that being said, I am posing literally every single day. I'm at a point right now where when I just throw it up, I'm automatically in my pose. There's no shakes, there's no fear. I'm comfortable in doing that. So now I transition doing that on my own every day in the mirror in my home to now when I'm in the gym in front of an audience of people, the other gym goers and whoever might be watching, they're my audience and I'm on that stage. So posing repetitively, consistently, that goes for anything, whether it's with posing, anything and everything. Consistency and repetition is the key, right? So I'm doing it all the time now, and it just seems to be easier and easier. Plus, I've worked in my shoes, so I don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, my feet hurt, my shoes are so tight. So that focus is no longer an issue. Now I can just focus on making sure that I'm hitting those quarter turns and what have you. So,
Out of the poses that you do, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
ah, what is my favorite pose? Um, I like to do the front one. I really enjoy the front one now because I understand how to make my quads pop. So every time I guess like, woo, look at those legs, right? I'm now seeing more developed glute tie-ins from the back. So now I understand how to arch that back to push the glutes out so that those tie-ins pop that much more, all of which I've learned from my coaches. So if I have to pick between those two, maybe I'll go with the back one because I really like the development that I now have with my glutes and the way it's tying in. Whereas if you look at my past shows, it's the glute and then it's there. There's not a whole lot there, so you can see that change. So I'd have to say it's that back pose.
Well, and with the back, I mean, you can let your smile down a little bit. That's the one thing that people don't understand is that your jaw muscles are going to be the most sore a lot of times than this whole thing. Because yeah, I've had people that have gotten docked for not smiling and for having. I mean, it's just there's so many little things with it, and the body's not meant to be in that much of a pose for that long a period of time, and the conditioning is so hard. How long did it take you before you think you developed that conditioning? Because that is the one thing that differentiates so many people.
Absolutely. So I never really had a good understanding of what that all meant for the longest while, Ryan. It wasn't until I did the show, my last two shows, up to the last one. One of the judges came up to, not the judges, sorry, somebody that was working behind the stage came up to me and they said, "Your conditioning is phenomenal." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much." Right. And I really didn't understand what that all meant, whereas now I have a better understanding. So it's I tell you, it's that cardio, and the way in which I'm training just brings it all together. Like I'm looking forward to seeing the final package on this body to see how conditioned I really am from then to now.
Are there any tips and tricks that you do when it just comes to the overall training and posing at doing this as a 47-year-old? Whereas, like, if I did this at 27, things might be a little bit easier for me. Is there anything that you feel like helps you as you get older to still, maintain this?
Wow, it's mental. It really is because I work for myself. I run a company. I'm a personal trainer. I'm a mom. My daughter's a volleyball player, so I'm ripping and running with her amongst everything else that I'm doing. So it's really, Natasha, you can do this. You were born for this because if you were not, you wouldn't be at this point looking the way you're looking because of all the work you've put into doing it. Don't stop. Don't give up. Don't stop because you've come too far and there's a bigger plan at the end of all of this. And that feeds my fire. That keeps me going. And I remind myself, I am 47. I will be 48 this year. And I look phenomenal. I feel the best that I ever have. Four babies came out of this body. And I'm a grandmother of three. So it's like, you know what? My children are watching this. My grandbabies will have something to look back at. YouTube, my social media, that's my grandma. That's my mom. And those thoughts alone tell me I got to keep going.
And when you're walking on that stage and finally getting able to show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months on, what is that feeling like for you?
Okay, so that feeling for me has always been, oh my gosh, I hope I don't crap myself literally on the stage. I'm like, sorry if that was too much. But it's a nervous situation because again, you got to see your people out in front of you, right? And I know that in a couple of my shows, when I go back and I look at the videos, I'm just like flying with the poses. It was just like, okay, I really needed to do better because of the nerves. Now for me, it's like, you know what? Breathe. You did this for a reason. And the reason was to get on this stage to showcase all the hard work that you put in for all the, what, 12 years I've been doing this, you know? So, but there's also that excitement, that adrenaline rush. It's exciting. It's like, wow, I finally got here after what, 20 weeks of prep, right? So yeah, it's exciting. It's nerve. Your nerves are definitely going to be there. I try to practice my breathing because that helps. That helps profusely. And just get up there and shine. Do the best that you can. But remember, bring your package because you worked so hard on it. So show it off.
And what is your go-to post-show meal? What's the thing that you crave the most afterwards?
Oh my gosh, I love chocolate cake. I mean, this is just terrible. Like, I crave chocolate cake every single day, but I've been told that I'll more than likely never eat chocolate cake again for a long while because I don't plan on stopping. So, but hopefully, once I get through this show, April 16th, I'll be able to have me that chocolate cake with lots of fudge and
Yeah, I mean that's a good thing to look forward to. That might be one of the things that I would personally be looking forward to myself. But I mean, I mentioned that I bring it up, and cardio is the bane of my existence, like it is for you. And I mean, unfortunately, when you become a bodybuilder, you do sort of have to sign a deal with the devil with cardio. How do you get through cardio? Because for me, like that's a never-ending struggle.
Right. So I've never had to do cardio 7 days a week. I've never, this is my first,
Fingers crossed.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. But I've been doing, okay, so I'll just share with you. Prior to was always, okay, we can do one of two things. We can either keep the carbs in, you do the cardio, or we pull the carbs out and then we just hit the cardio as we get closer to the show, right? For some reason it worked, but it doesn't work because the objective to doing the cardio is not only to burn excess calories, but it tightens the body up, right? So having a better understanding of why, versus I don't want to do it because I'm afraid of my losing muscle and my this, that, and the other. Now it's like, okay, I got to do this 7 days because this is the end result. And I'm already starting to see it in these past 2 weeks. Now, when I started with this team, it should have been 7 days. And I'd send them my progress check-ins every Sunday. I'm so sorry, I only did 4 days. I'm going to do better next week. Okay, next week comes. Okay, I did 4 days again. Please don't get mad, but I have a checklist and I'm holding myself accountable. So actually, what I did is I started a challenge on Instagram, a personal challenge where because I like to be on the camera, I'm going to use that to my advantage. And I'm going to record every day for the first week of me doing my cardio, holding myself accountable to it. This way, I'm slowly creating a habit. So now, like clockwork, first thing, get up in the morning, do what I got to do in the restroom, and then I'm out the door, get my 45 minutes in, come home, eat, and then off to train. So I had to find a system that would work to understand why it's so important for me to do this. So this is what I have to do. So I found a system that worked to help me do that. So that would have been it. That's the challenge there. And this is where I'm at with it now.
I mean, yeah, it's all about finding the system really for so many people, and that takes people sometimes years. Some people are just naturally, I mean, because this is such a type A sport where, I mean, yeah, you have to have everything down pat. And I mean, once you find your groove, it does become somewhat easier. But we can see you have some workout equipment behind you. Do you like to do your workouts at home sometimes? Or are you more of a gym goer? Or where'd you fall in that?
Okay, being a personal trainer, I actually have a garage gym. I recently threw my couch out. I said, we don't need this couch. We don't need it. I'm just going to turn the space into a studio because I do pole training. I like to dance. I'm very active regardless. So I brought some of the equipment home so that I'm not so far away from my daughter all the time because she needs mom here too. I train in the gym. I train in the gym 6 days a week. However, I like to work on my form. So I do have my bar here so I can do my deadlifts, practice my form with my deadlifts because there's techniques to everything and I don't want to hurt my back. So I'm constantly practicing my form. But if there's ever moments where I wasn't able to get to the gym due to work or what have you in the morning and I need to be home, at least I know, okay, I can get certain things done here. So it's more like a backup more than anything, but for the most part, I typically go to the gym.
Well, and I mean, being a personal trainer, you hear this probably about 100 times a day. But the number one myth and stereotype that I love to bust on this podcast, I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there are still so many women that have that fear that if they walk into the gym and they even look at a dumbbell, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And it's just like, again, I would spend my entire life savings to train with you then because you would have the most blessed genetics of all time. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I bet you still hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that?
I've never had that fear. I've never had that fear because from day one, it was about progression, right? But I'm also one of those Google researchers. So I'm constantly researching. I have to have knowledge and understanding, and I ask a lot of questions. Yes, I've heard this from a lot. I've actually been approached in the gym. I love your legs, but I don't want your upper body. Like that's just too big. Like I look pretty small now, but when I get pumped up, I just blow up, right? I'm like, okay, well, let me help you understand what that looks like. My shoulders look like this because of how I train, right? If you're training a specific way, then know that getting, you're going to end up looking a certain way based on that style of training, based on pushing the weight that you're eating in conjunction or lifting in conjunction to the way you're eating, right? Because they work hand in hand. If you want to grow that muscle you just broke down and tear, you're going to fuel it and feed it and you're going to maximize it. And then you're going to break it down and do it again. So it's just a lack of knowledge. That's really what it comes down to. There is nothing wrong with you lifting heavy weight. You burn more calories when you push more weight, right? It's the other systems that fall in place. Now, if you come to me as a client and you're 5'4", right, and you've got that quad development already there, then I'm going to modify how I train you from your core down, because you don't want huge quads. You don't want you want to keep certain things a certain way. So then we have to modify the style of training and then pay attention to what we're eating and what works for your body type to ensure we can reach your goal and not have you swelling up. So no, you want to lift those weights. It helps you burn calories.
And everyone that says like they don't want the upper body, it's like she's not like Hulk Hogan, everyone over here, basically. So it's just like, yeah, I don't get that myself. Where it's just like, and if that does even happen to you, it's like just stop working out. Then you, it's not gonna stay there unless you're like one of those 1%ers that I don't even want to bring up on the podcast because they're the most genetically best people on the planet when it comes to that. And I hope God's playing a cruel joke on them and they wake up 400 pounds one day, but you know it hasn't happened yet. But I mean, sleep is also the most important thing in this lifestyle and in just anyone's normal life in general. And anyone that disagrees with me on that, I've said this a million times, but pull an all nighter and then go and try to work out and tell me how that happens to, fall into the cards for you. But what is your relationship with sleep like? Because I mean, being a bodybuilder, your sleep schedule can be somewhat bipolar at times.
I love that you asked that. Sleep is so important. It is so important because as you sleep is when the body is most active. It's when the body's healing, repairing, growing, doing all that good stuff. That's when the magic happens. So, yes, sleep it can be very bipolar. You're absolutely right, especially in prep and I'm eating 6 meals and I'm not getting my last meal until like 12 in the morning. And then I'm going straight to bed, right? That's kind of late. I'm only getting 6.5 hours. My rule of thumb is I have to have a minimum of 6 hours sleep, because if I can get six REM deep sleep, then I'm good, right? If on the weekend I'll try to sleep in a little bit longer, my body doesn't let me do it though. Doesn't let me do it. It wants to get up like clockwork every day at the same time. But there is absolutely no way I can be up to like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and then get up there. I'd be no good the next day, so I just don't let it happen. That's why when we go into prep we literally have to dial in and our whole lifestyle has to change. Otherwise it's just not the outcome is not going to be the same as if you did things differently. But sleep is so vital, not just in this for this purpose, just in general. That's when your body's repairing and healing, so you want to get good rest in. But yeah, I love my sleep. So
Me too. I mean, I need it, significantly. But when you are working out, I mean, most people confuse bodybuilders a lot of times with power lifters, where they just assume that bodybuilders, lifting heavy all the time. How do you like to incorporate, stuff in your workouts? Do you lift heavy at all, or do you do more of the bodybuilding workouts a lot, where it's more about just reps and, just really developing the muscle? Or where do you stand when it comes to working out like that?
well, my deadlift, I maxed to 275. My leg press, I've maxed to 900 pounds. I go heavy. I mean, I know there's a million of us out there, and there's some ladies that are pushing some serious weight. And I want to get to that point. Absolutely. It's kind of hard when you don't have a spotter to take you up there. It can get a little challenging. However, I'm gonna keep pushing as far as I can because I see the end result of it, right? So I lift pretty heavy. And I'm working on lifting even heavier. Yeah, light workouts at this point, lightweight, 10 pounds are nothing, 15s are nothing, 17 and a halfs are nothing. Bicep curls for me, I'm hitting those on 30s and 35s, right? That's challenging for me. Anything less than that is like, okay, what are you doing? You got to go heavier than this because you can.
Your arms look here. Show us the biceps. Let's see the guns. Your arms look fantastic. Look at that. That's insane. 47 years old. Good God.
Yeah.
What do you do? What do you do
And
for?
they're not
They're
they're
perfect. Look at
not
that.
too big.
Yeah, they're perfect. What do you do for biceps?
I do a lot of bicep curls, hammer curls. But your biceps are engaged quite a bit in a lot of different workouts too, right? So it might not be the primary, but they're still engaged. So, but yeah, I've started doing a lot more bicep curls, hammer curls. Um, what else am I doing? I'd have to look at my program, but they have me doing quite a bit more, incorporating more biceps and triceps. My triceps are a little bit weaker, so we're incorporating more on that as well. But yeah,
I always tell people don't forget about those triceps because that's like 75% of your arm right there. If you have nice triceps, it really, adds to the illusion of bigger arms too. So that's my piece of advice, right there. But if someone were to walk up to you and say, Natasha, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
wow, that's a great question, Ryan. What would be the one thing I would want to see change? I believe already the community is really good as far as supporting each other. I see that and I think that's absolutely wonderful. I know that there's a lot of politics. Um, to speak to that, I'm really in no position or educated to speak to the politics. However, just knowing that they exist would be something that I would be okay. We need to revisit what that looks like and understand why, because it should be a fair share all the way straight across the board for everybody, with reference to the next level or next steps or judging or whatever the case may be in that scenario. But again, I'm not able to articulate in full because I don't have a lot of information behind that, but I know it exists. And I know that it's not welcomed. I know that it's bothered by many, especially high ranking. I have BB pros or what have you. I've heard things been said and shared and whatnot. So if there would be anything that I would want to change, it would be, that really, making it more fair and eliminating that process so that it's just fair playing field straight across the board based off of how hard one worked at getting to that level, based off of the criteria that's looked for with the judging. And it should just be fair in that regard. It shouldn't be anything else but that.
I've always said there should be like a 5'7" or 5'8" and up category too for every one of these shows though too exactly because like if you're having someone like you stand up against someone who's 4'11" or 5 feet, it's hard to judge based on just the vast differences in the bodies.
Yes, you know what? I'm happy you bring that up because that's very true. That's very true. Like, for example, when you get to open, it's like, okay, I'm 5'10" and she's about 5'5" and we're at open. She's gonna look different from me. We're gonna look so different. Put me in open with somebody that's my height, but there's nobody my height that made it to open. So it's like, what are we gonna do there? But yeah, I do agree with that too. Yeah, it's a little bit harder when you're taller and you're placed beside somebody that's a little bit shorter than you. You definitely see the differences.
Yep. Absolutely. And I mean, when we have you on a year from now, because I'd love to have you back on a year and just talk about, what you've been up to, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding or just your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved when we talk to you a year from today?
Absolutely, and thank you. Well, I plan to go pro this year. Finally, thank you. After the amount of shows that I've done thus far, I'm ready for that next level. But I don't want to stop there. I want to go pro, and I want to do the pro shows. And Lord willing, if I can get those points to take me to the Olympia stage, even if it's one time, I want to do that. That would be the most amazing goal to walk on the Olympia stage. And I say that with my eyes getting teary because I believe it so much. So that is the direction that I want to go to with this. And I'd like to see my business as a personal trainer. I want to help men and women accomplish their goals, not just physically, but the mental aspect that you get from it. And if I can touch their lives on that regard and help them, they're only going to do the same thing for the next person. And it's just a trickling effect. So I would love for my business as a personal trainer to expand so that I can reach more people in support to helping them get to where they want to do, just like folks that helped me get to where I'm at now.
And is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Absolutely. I'd love to shout out my team, Coach Lalo and Lahara Robinson. Actually, my coach, Lahara, she took sixth place Miss Olympia last year. You need to check her out. She's simply phenomenal. Their team out here in Houston is Armor Fitness Texas or Armor Training. I can definitely share that information with you as far as their IG information. But yeah, I'd like to shout them out because they literally took my body and he is a mastermind. He looked at my physique and said, "This is what needs to be done." She looked at my physique together, their husband and wife, and said, "This is what needs to be done." Now I look at my physique and it's like, wow, at 47, and literally within 6 weeks, this is where we're at right now. Yes, you guys know what's going on. So shout out to them because they're masterminds when it comes to this sport.
Well, absolutely, and I'll leave a link down below for that too, and I'll leave a link down below for Natasha's Instagram too, and I highly recommend everyone go and check it out. And buyer beware, you will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies, and get in shape. But again, Natasha, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story. I mean, it was an absolute delight to have you on. I wish you nothing but the best. I do think you'll be getting your pro card this year, and so yeah, I look forward to talking to you next year as a IFBB pro. And again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for having me. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Again, everyone, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful Sunday.